If you like these stories and you want to follow the giants along on their adventures, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you.
Tell me a giant toy.
Sometimes, up in the giant house on the mountainside, things got crazy. Sometimes they got too crazy for Bo. And he liked to just go and do something by himself, all alone, with nobody bothering him, and nobody telling him what to do. He liked to be his own boss. Well, today was one of those days. Everyone was fighting. Everyone was bothering Bo, and he just wanted to be alone. He decided to escape to the island in the middle of the mountain lake. And there, he would do one of his favorite activities. He would try to dig for some dinosaurs. He had been doing this for years and had never found a dinosaur, ever. But it was still fun to look and to pretend. You never know. Today might be the day that he finally found his dinosaur. To get to the island, Bo had to swim. He was a strong swimmer. He had been swimming since he was a toddler. He made it across the mountain lake, lickety-split, laid on the sand to dry off, and then go in search for his dinosaur. When he got to his dinosaur excavation site, he started to dig. He dug a little here, he dug a little there. No luck. Couldn't find a single dinosaur bone. After digging for what felt like hours, but in actuality it was only about 15 minutes, Bo decided he was getting a little tired from the swim across the mountain lake and digging. So he found a nice shaded area in the trees and sat down, leaning against one of the tree trunks. It was such a comfy spot, he closed his eyes and began to imagine what it would be like to actually find a real, live dinosaur skeleton in the ground. Shortly after Bo closed his eyes, he was sleeping. But right after he fell asleep, he was awakened by stomping noises. He cautiously opened one eye, then the other, and standing right before his very eyes was a triceratops. Now, Bo himself was a giant, but this triceratops was way bigger than he even was. This was the first animal he had ever seen that was larger than he himself. Given the Triceratops' size and his 3 horns, Bo would have been very frightened. But he remembered from reading all about dinosaurs that Triceratops were herbivores and only ate plants. So he knew that he wouldn't be eaten. But he still was a little worried if he upset the Triceratops, he might get plowed over by him like a bull. So he got up very slowly and put his hands in front of him so the Triceratops could sniff him and know that Bo was not a threat and he was a friendly giant. The Triceratops hesitantly walked up to Bo's hands and sniffed them. Then the Triceratops let out a big puff of air out of his nostrils. And boogers, dinosaur boogers, got all over Bo's hands. Bo was disgusted and he wanted to go wash them as quick as he could. But he didn't want to frighten the triceratops. So he slowly turned towards the water and very carefully walked over to the lake and rinsed his hands off without making any sudden movements. When Bo turned back to where the triceratops was, he couldn't see it. He looked around a little bit longer and he couldn't find the triceratops. So he went into the woods and there he found the triceratops resting in the shade. When the triceratops saw Bo walking up, he perked up and stood. Bo said, "Hi, Triceratops." The Triceratops bowed his head to Bo. Bo asked, "Can you understand me?" The Triceratops nodded his head yes. Bo had so many questions for this Triceratops. The first one was, "Where did you come from? How did you get here?" The Triceratops walked Bo over to the hole that he had been digging and pointed with one of its legs in the hole. "You came out of that hole?" Bo asked. The Triceratops nodded. Yes, he came out of that hole. "You mean I dug you up?" The Triceratops nodded, and it looked like he was smiling. The next question Bo had was, "What's your name?" The Triceratops shook his head. No. "You don't have a name?" Bo asked. Again, the Triceratops shook his head. No. The Triceratops did not have a name. "Were you just sleeping down in that hole these millions of years?" The Triceratops nodded. Bo said, "Whoa, that's a really long sleep." The Triceratops just shrugged. Because sometimes when you're sleeping, you don't know if the time passes. You don't know how long you've been sleeping for. So the Triceratops had no idea he had been sleeping for millions upon millions of years. "Do you know any tricks?" Bo asked. The Triceratops nodded, ran, grabbed a big stick and brought it to Bo and pushed it towards him. Bo picked up the stick and threw it as far as he could. The Triceratops bounded away, over tree trunks, across the forest, retrieved the stick, brought it back to Bo in his mouth, and dropped it at his feet. Bo bent over, picked up the stick the Triceratops had laid at his feet. As he was lifting it up to throw it, the Triceratops took it out of Bo's hand, put it in his mouth, and tossed it as far as he could, and then looked at Bo, expecting Bo to go fetch it. "You want me to fetch the stick?" The Triceratops nodded. So Bo went in search of the stick. That's right. The Triceratops was getting Bo to play fetch. It didn't take long for Bo to find the stick that the Triceratops had tossed. And he brought it back. He looked at the Triceratops and said, I have one more thing to ask you. The Triceratops was ready to listen. Bo asked, Can I hear you roar? The Triceratops nodded. He planted his front legs firmly on the ground, arched his neck upwards, and let out a dinosaur roar. And with that amazing roar, Bo woke up. He looked around him for any sign of a Triceratops. He couldn't find a single thing. No Triceratop noises, no Triceratop footprints. Definitely no Triceratops. It was all just a dream. Bo looked back over to the place where he had been digging. And just as it was before he fell asleep for his nap, with no signs of any Triceratops coming out of the hole, Bo shrugged his shoulders and said, That was the coolest dream I've ever had. Then he dived back into the mountain lake and swam back to the other side, where he climbed back up the mountain and down the mountain and got back home. Somehow, in his absence, everyone seemed calmer. No one was fighting, and it reminded him how lucky he was to have a home with such a loving family in it. The end. Good night, Giants.